Welcome to the Book of Recaps. At the beginning of the movie, we are shown Nick, who goes to his sister's bar. Today is Nick's wedding anniversary. He has been married for 5 years. However, he is not happy with his marriage. That's why he tells his sister that he may get a divorce soon. He also explains that every year on their anniversary, his wife Amy plays a game in which she hides his gift and he has to find it through clues. But it seems that many things have deteriorated in their marriage. After this, when Nick returns home, he discovers that his wife is not there. The table in the living room is broken. Therefore, he calls the detective. The detective arrives with her assistant. As she searches the house, she begins to suspect Nick of being involved in his wife's disappearance. This is because they find some evidence at home suggesting that Nick and his wife did not get along. Actually, Nick is a writing teacher, while his wife Amy was a writer who used to be very famous in her teenage years. Consequently, the detective takes Nick to the police station, where he is subjected to numerous questions. However, Nick does not provide satisfactory answers. Since there is no solid evidence against Nick, the senior detective is forced to release him. Now, because Amy is somewhat of a celebrity, the news of her disappearance spreads throughout the country. Nick's wife, Amy, has suddenly disappeared, and Nick is not showing much interest in the case. This leads everyone to suspect him and his sister, believing that they made Amy disappear out of greed for money. Now, when Nick returns home, he is consumed by memories of the past. These flashbacks reveal that Amy, who was very famous and wealthy, had married Nick, who came from a middle-class family. Both were in the writing industry, but due to the recession, they both lost their jobs. Following that, Nick's mother becomes ill. As a result, Nick decides to leave New York and move in with his mother. He does not inform Amy of this decision. Nevertheless, Amy also comes along. Even after his mother's death, Nick stays there. By now, he has lost interest in his work. Therefore, Amy opens a bar for him, which his sister manages with him, perhaps because he himself doesn't want to work hard. Gradually, Nick and Amy's relationship continues to deteriorate. Subsequently, Nick gets a job as a writing teacher at a college, where he meets a student named Andy. Soon, they begin an affair. The story returns to the present. The detective discovers some blood marks in Nick's house. This further intensifies the detective's suspicion of Nick. Furthermore, the detective learns from the neighbors that the couple had been fighting, leading Amy to feel unsafe. That's why she bought a gun. When the detective goes to the washroom, she finds samples of Amy's urine, which she sends to the lab. The lab results confirm that Amy was pregnant. However, Nick denies this, claiming that he and Amy did not have that kind of relationship. The detective's suspicion of Nick deepens, so she doesn't believe anything he says. And now, Nick's neighbor comes forward. She claims to be a very close friend of Amy's, stating that Amy always wanted to start a family. But because she had no relationship with Nick, she was never able to plan a family. Nick is suspicious of this woman because he knows that Amy never engaged in such personal conversations with her neighbors, nor did she like to befriend them. He tells this to the detective as well, but the detective dismisses his suspicions. Then the detective finds a burnt diary in the house. It contains entries stating that Nick is a threat to Amy's life. The detective's assistant suggests arresting Nick. However, they still lack solid evidence proving that Nick killed his wife, Amy. On the other hand, we are shown a woman driving a car, who is revealed to be Amy, having significantly altered her appearance. Amy reflects on the day she went to the bar to meet Nick and saw him and his student, Andy, together outside, displaying a close intimacy. This sight deeply saddened her, considering her unwavering support for Nick. Despite coming from a wealthy family, she had chosen to marry him. Furthermore, she had accompanied him when his mother became ill. When he was jobless and penniless, she had even opened a bar for him. And now, she also discovers that Nick intends to divorce her on their wedding anniversary. Consequently, she devises a plan to exact revenge on Nick. She deliberately spends a large sum of money from his credit card, aiming to create the impression that Nick is recklessly spending. In addition, she manipulates him into signing insurance papers and increases the amount of her life insurance policy. intending to make it appear as though Nick killed Amy for the insurance money. She also befriends her neighbor, who is already pregnant, and confides in her about her troubled relationship with Nick, seeking her sympathy. She intentionally leaves her urine samples in the bathroom, intending the police to believe that Nick killed his wife because she was pregnant. The harshest possible punishment could be given for killing a pregnant woman. She also extracts her own blood and spreads and cleans it on the floor, creating bloodstain evidence for the police. On their wedding anniversary, a game was a tradition where he had to find all the gifts with clues. But this time, the clues were not for him but for the detective. Now, Nick goes to his sister's garage. There, he discovers a large number of items purchased with his credit card. In fact, these are the shopping from his card. And when he opens one of the boxes, he finds what appears to be the murder weapon. This discovery terrifies his sister, as she could also be implicated. He leaves everything there and departs. However, the detective, who has been constantly monitoring him, arrives and finds the murder weapon. Subsequently, Nick and his sister are arrested. But now, Nick has been released on bail. He returns to New York and hires a highly skilled lawyer. He recounts the entire story to the lawyer, emphasizing that he never felt safe with Amy, perceiving her as somewhat of a psychopath. Following this, Nick meets Amy's first boyfriend, the one she had falsely accused of sexual assault and had imprisoned. After speaking with him, Nick realizes that Amy is seeking revenge against him. And now Nick goes to meet Amy's other boyfriend, who is very rich. He refuses to talk to Nick, because even today he loves Amy. The narrative shifts to Amy, who is shown living in a small town, socializing with her neighbor. But then her money clip falls, and her neighbors see the large amount of cash she's carrying. They later come to her house at night and steal all her money. Now penniless, she calls her rich boyfriend, who still harbors feelings for her. She calls him to meet her, where she tells him that Nick always tortured her and that she was in danger. She says that's why she left home and doesn't want to return. After this, her ex-boyfriend takes her to his lake house. He tells her she can stay there for a while because no one ever comes there. Meanwhile, in Amy's town, everyone still believes she is alive. Therefore, a candlelight vigil is held for her, during which Nick gives a very emotional speech, pleading for her to come home. Nick's girlfriend, Andy, is also standing in the crowd. When she hears this, she becomes very angry and tells the press that she and Nick are having an affair. After hearing this, everyone believes that Nick made his wife disappear or killed her. Following this, Nick goes to his lawyer. His lawyer tells him that all the evidence is now stacked against him. However, he suggests that Nick go on a famous talk show and profess his deep love for his wife. He should admit his mistakes and express his desire to have his family and wife back. The reasoning is that if his wife is still alive, she might be watching the news or TV, and his emotional appeal could prompt her to return home. So, Nick goes on a talk show and declares his great love for his wife, begging her to come home. He even pretends to cry. Amy is watching this interview and notices that Nick is wearing the same tie she once gave him as a gift. Her ex-boyfriend also takes note of this while listening to the interview. Now, Amy is starting to waver and wants to go back home, but Colin doesn't want her to. He wants her to stay with him. Amy's feelings are becoming conflicted, which causes her to become angry with her ex-boyfriend. At the police station, the detective finds Amy's blood on the weapon that was discovered with the gift in Nick's sister's garage. The presence of Amy's blood leads to her rearrest. However, her lawyer once again secures her release on bail. On the other hand, Amy, while appearing affectionate towards Colin, acts as if she is listening to him in front of the cameras. In reality, she is plotting something else. She is very skilled at devising plans. Later, when Colin leaves, she inflicts wounds on her own body. When Colin returns at night, she seduces him. They become intimate. In the midst of this, Amy kills Colin and immediately goes to her house, where the press has already gathered. She sees Nick there, but he realizes that this is part of her plan. Following this, she is taken to the hospital. There, she tells the detective that she and Colin were childhood sweethearts but later separated. However, his obsession with her never ceased. She claims he constantly wrote her letters, and one day on her anniversary, Colin came to her house. She fled to the kitchen to escape him, but he attacked her with a stick, rendering her unconscious, and took her to his lake house. She says that he used to force himself on her. She suggests that the detective check the CCTV footage from the lake house for evidence. In reality, she was acting out these reactions in front of the CCTV cameras to portray Colin as her captor. And the detective, who has been observing her closely for a long time, begins to suspect her. He asks her where the murder weapon came from in Nick's sister's garage if Colin had kidnapped her. She doesn't answer him, but instead says that if she hadn't returned, they would have unjustly imprisoned her innocent husband long ago. Then, she pretends to lose consciousness. However, the detective now strongly suspects her. After this, Nick takes her home and tells her to stop pretending, saying he knows she is lying and that she killed Colin. She first checks to see if Nick is wearing any recording devices. Then, she tells him the whole truth, but acknowledges that no one will believe her now because everyone's mind is already made up. She tells Nick that after watching his interview, she became convinced that he is the right person for her, and that's why she came back. Nick decides to tell his lawyer and the detective everything. He recounts the entire story to them. However, the detective says that he has no evidence against her. He argues that she killed Colin in self-defense, so she cannot be arrested. Now, when Nick is at home, Amy approaches him and insists that he fulfill all his duties as a good husband. Nick is now afraid of Amy. The next morning, a reporter comes to their house to interview her. Amy tells Nick that he has to agree with all the things she has planned, that he made the credit card purchases, that he hit her, and that their relationship was bad before. She insists that everything is fine now, but Nick refuses to go along with her plan. He has decided to leave Amy. Amy then reveals that she is going to have his child. Nick is shocked to hear this because they haven't been intimate in months. Amy explains that she used the sperm sample he provided at the clinic to artificially inseminate herself and is now pregnant. Nick says that she can't force him to stay. He will never be with her. Amy threatens him, saying that she will make sure the whole world is against him and that when their child is born, she will instill hatred for him in the child's heart. Nick feels completely trapped. He knows that he has a responsibility to his child. Therefore, he decides that he will stay with Amy. After this, we are shown an interview where they both announce that Amy is pregnant and about to give birth. In reality, Nick has compromised with Amy. He wants to provide a better life for his child. That's why he has decided to stay with Amy. What would you do if you were in Nick's place? Viewers are encouraged to share their thoughts in the comments. The video ends with a farewell.